Well, we're all familiar with the idea that the arts get used to influence. Soft power, it's often called, and believe it or not, you can actually study soft power at university. In fact, I personally know someone who has a doctorate in soft power, specifically looking at South Korea and China and the way they use soft power to try and influence each other. So it's a thing, but it's a thing that happens often outside of our notice. It happens to us and around us all the time, a little bit like a bath of warm water. You can be immersed in it and not even really notice that it's there. Well, someone who's definitely been paying attention is someone who, well, their background is actually music. Their background is creating the very stuff that he now talks about. He still does. He's a DJ, he's a musician, and he's a public speaker, and he's coming to Australia. His name's Mark Devlin, and he joins me now on the Aussie Wire. Mark, thank you so much for coming on.
No worries, brother. Thanks for having me.
Now, I do like it when someone brings their own microphone. The audio quality you're giving us there is absolutely outstanding. I would expect no less from a DJ, of course.
It's a DJ thing, yeah.
Now, look, before we get to what you're doing, what you're speaking about, why you're coming to Australia, there would be many people watching the Aussie Wire now who've never heard of you before, not familiar with your work. What is it? What's your background? Why is it that you've ended up talking about these issues?
Okay, I'll try and condense the last 30 years into about 2 minutes.
Okay.
So my background is as a club and radio DJ. I got started in 1990. I became reasonably well known on what's called the urban music scene in the UK. So I was playing R&B, rap and hip hop, reggae, this sort of stuff. And I did a whole load of gigs in the clubs up and down the UK. I was fortunate enough to get to travel internationally. I came to Australia 6 times between 2003 and 2009 and played some really great gigs out there. And I did a bunch of radio shows. I wrote for music magazines. I got to meet many of the big artists on the R&B and hip hop scene. Met Beyonce one time before she broke through to fame. But things got to the stage around about 2007 where I'd started questioning the true nature of this world in which we live. I'd always had these burning questions at the back of my mind. Questions like, why is there always war? Why is there always injustice? Why do politicians quite literally get away with murder? Why is all this unfairness, this suffering allowed to happen? So that caused me to question the very nature of reality itself. And it got me searching for the answers. I got turned on to the books of David Icke by my dad. He put me onto them. And reading those books, I found they answered so many of the questions I'd had up to that point. And by 2010, I'd reevaluated my entire worldview. And I realized that I could put all the skills and all the experience that I'd built up to that point to use in communicating meaningful, empowering knowledge to other people. So that's pretty much what I've been doing since 2010, through books, through podcasts, through videos, through live presentations. I've spoken at a few protests and rallies as well, and it's become my life. So things have really changed for me. My full-time job is now doing all this stuff, and it's replaced all the DJ business that was there before. And I think this is probably a bit more meaningful and contributes a bit more to humanity and creation.
Now, in particular, you've got a particular focus on the way that music is designed and intended to influence people in ways that, let's say, the World Economic Forum, UN, and other bodies like that might like, nudging people, I guess, in that direction. Can you elaborate a little bit on, for the skeptics out there who are sitting there going, oh yeah, here we go, another conspiracy theory. What is it that you've seen that convinces you that that is the case?
Very early on, I came to realize that every aspect of our lives is completely controlled by unseen forces, mainly secret society networks working behind the scenes. We can see this in politics, we can see this in big business, we can see it in academia, the world of so-called science, the world of so-called medicine, all these different walks of life. So why would anyone expect it to be any different in entertainment and popular culture? In fact, those vehicles form the perfect opportunities to mass mind control large numbers of people, to shape their worldviews, to shape their thoughts, their perceptions, their viewpoints, even influence their behaviors. Because when it's done through movies, TV shows, and specifically music, people's guard is down. Nobody's expecting expecting to have all this stuff formed for them when they think they're just having some mindless, harmless fun and entertainment. So I really wanted to comprehend better how these dynamics work. And I came to realize that through music, you get things like mass social engineering psyops, you get the pushing of culture creation, entire ways of life, entire cultures are pushed specifically through music. I used to play rap and hip hop. And at the time, I would have denied that that music could have been influencing the way people behave. But looking back now with the benefit of hindsight, maturity, and having done the research, I can see that absolutely the lyrical content of many of those records was affecting the behaviors of people that listened to them. It even affected my own behaviors. I used to carry myself with a certain swagger, a certain attitude, and it was all BS, you know. It was all coming from ego, and I couldn't see it at the time, but I can see it now. And the thing about my books, where I talk about the military connections of the music industry, how it's inherently connected to the military industrial complex. Also, you have social engineering think tanks such as Tavistock and many others pushing their agendas through music, is that I provide citations and references at every point along the way. So for anyone that thinks, oh, he's talking PS, he's just pulling this stuff out of his butt, you know, it's all there. All the references are there. Everything is resource based. And anyone can check this stuff out for themselves. And I think if they do set off on that path of research, they'll discover for themselves that everything I've been saying these past almost 15 years absolutely checks out. And that really is what these industries are ultimately used for.
So you mentioned yourself, you know, at the time you would have denied that this is what was happening. Many people object to the idea of grand conspiracies, and I'll be honest, I'm not sure where I sit on a lot of this stuff either, but one of the common objections is, oh, they couldn't possibly have that many people all involved in a conspiracy to control people or to influence people or to do these sorts of things. But evidently, I gather from your earlier comment that you would argue that actually a lot of the people involved aren't necessarily aware of the ways in which they're being used.
Yeah, it's layered, it's fragmented in terms of the way the industry is structured. So if you imagine it as a pyramid of power, at the very base of the pyramid, you've got the vast bulk of artists, many of whom are just there to fill out the industry, to keep the cogs of the machine turning. So these bands, these musicians probably wouldn't be aware of the true nature of their industry. They're just chuffed that they've got a record deal and that they're touring and all of this, and that's all they think about. Then as you go up that pyramid of power, you find the compartmentalization of knowledge. And by the time you get to the very upper strata, you've got those in absolute full knowledge of what's really going on. So in many cases, these will be the executives that run the record companies, but also you'll have many artists who will absolutely know what they're a part of. So by the time you get to the level of sirs, don't know if you've noticed, but there's quite a few sirs who figure in the sort of research that I do and in the pushing of agendas. Sir Paul McCartney, if that's who he really is. We can get to that. Sir Ringo Starr, his bandmate. Sir Mick Jagger, Sir Elton John, Sir Tom Jones, Sir Rod Stewart. All these different sirs. By the time you get to that level, you will have gained some knowledge, or maybe you've always had it, of what you're really doing. Someone once emailed me. It's very difficult to verify this, but I'll tell you what they said anyway. And they said they found themselves sitting on a plane, first class, traveling next to Mick Jagger. And Mick Jagger had had a few drinks, according to this person. He was well oiled, and he started chatting to her. And he said, my job all these decades has been to debase culture and to degrade morality, sex and drugs and rock and roll. That's my job. That's what he's alleged to have said. It wouldn't surprise me if that turns out to be a true story, because my research has borne out, and the research of many others, I'm not the only one doing this, that is exactly what the music industry has been used to push since the 1950s. Really, you could take it back to the mid 1950s. That was the birth of the rock and roll era. And that's when the idea of sex and drugs and rock and roll first entered youth culture. And it's been getting pushed ever since. The agendas change from decade to decade. Of course, the artists change, the styles and the scenes and the genres change, but the agendas always remain the same, which is to debase culture, to debase the family value system. That's a big part of it, breaking down the traditional family unit. That's what entertainment has been used for. And also psychological manipulation, the pushing of agendas, the implanting of ideas into the subliminal mind of the general public, such as, for instance, what we've all lived through the last 3.5 years. There's endless examples of pre-programming of this nature, which has gone into movies, TV shows, and also music. And it prepares the general public for what is known to be coming. So when the news anchors pop up on the TV screens and tell you what's happening in the world, there's already a familiarity with the narrative in the subconscious mind of public, because they've been prepared for it through culture, through entertainment. That's its real role.
Well, Mark, there's a lot more that we could talk about, but if people want to hear more from you, they should come and hear from you while you're in Australia. Where would people go in order to learn more about your tour, where you're going to be, where they can find tickets?
Sure. Well, I plan to do this tour in March 2020. Thinking in the past there. And that was expert timing, of course, because it never happened for obvious reasons. So it's been 3.5 years in the planning. Things reached a point towards the end of 2022 where it became clear that I was going to be able to travel again. At least there was a small window of opportunity there. So I thought, I've got to strike while that chance is there.
Sure.
And so at the very start of this year, I put together this tour, which is happening in November. So it's 4 dates. I'm going to be hitting Melbourne on Wednesday, the 1st of November. Then I'm heading over to Brisbane on Thursday, the 2nd. I've got a day off on the Friday. Then on Saturday, the 4th, I'm over to Sydney. I'm sort of zigzagging around a bit, but it's just the way the dates had to fall. And then on Sunday, the 5th of November, I'm going to be in Perth. So all of those gigs happen in the evening. They kick off about 6:30, with the exception of the Sydney one. The Sydney gig is in the afternoon between 1 and 5.
And where can people find tickets?
It would be great to see. Well, the tickets are on trybooking.com.au. You can find the links to that on my main website, djmarkdevlin.com/events. If you go to that page, there are direct links to each of these gigs. There are QR codes that you can scan if you're that way inclined, and it will take you through to the ticket booking page. But also there are links you can click on to go and grab your ticket for each of these. So it would be great to see as many people as possible who would like to hear more. I'm going to be unpacking a lot of my information, a lot of my research over the past 15 years, and there's going to be a specific reference to many Australian artists. So in the second half of the talks, I'm going to be honing in on a few Aussie artists and giving people some interesting stuff about them.
Well, Mark, it sounds very interesting. I'll be in the UK at the time. Ironically, we're going to pass each other in the sky. I'm heading for the UK. You're coming to Australia. But if anyone's interested, do check out Mark Devlin's website and get yourself some tickets. Mark Devlin, thank you so much for coming on the Aussie Wire.
No worries, mate. I'll wave to you in the sky.
The Aussie Wire is taking a break for the next 2 weeks as we bring you in-depth extended coverage of the Alliance for Responsible Citizenship launch in London. Follow all our socials via @theAussieWire so you don't miss a thing. Be sure to join our email list for updates and for the chance to win $300 worth of Aussie Wire merch, of course. And if you want all of the behind-the-scenes fun stuff, become an Aussie Wire insider. Now, insiders get giveaways, discounts, bonus content, and our insiders community. And in the process, they make it financially possible for the Aussie Wire to keep bringing you truth, freedom, and hope. The link to become an insider is in this video's description. I'm Topher Field, and this is the Aussie Wire.